All right, so it's June 25th, and this time a year ago, had been warning, I guess, for even more than that, about the coming economic tsunami, just not being able to define how big the tsunami was, but that it was inevitable. And the most important thing about tsunamis is you don't see them until they appear at the last moment when they pop up on the beach. So most tsunamis are basically tidal waves that are underneath the surface of the water. And they happen usually with some type of underwater earthquake. And it creates a tremor, whether there's a shift in the plate or something like that, or movement from the volcanic activity, but it creates this wave, okay? And as this wave can be moving at the speed of a jetliner, but you can't see it. In fact, even if you're sitting on the surface of the water in a boat, you might notice a little bit of a ripple, but you don't have any idea what's actually underneath. And so as, you know, from deep in the ocean, and then it moves up towards land, as that tsunami moves, then it actually goes up out of the depth of the ocean. And when it's moving up to land, that's when the last moment you see a 5-foot or a 50-foot tsunami instantly pop up on the ocean, because it's coming at such speed and power that when it comes up, then there's huge devastation. That's what I use as an explanation to talk about what's actually happening based on the necessity that our governments felt during the pandemic, with people being told to stay home, people being laid off, losing their jobs, of, you know, how are we going to deal with this unknown about when we're going to get past it, when there's going to be some type of inoculation or vaccine, will it work, you know, how soon will it be ready, and in the meantime, how are we going to take care of, you know, our normal bills, routines, and, you know, mortgage, rent, all that kind of stuff. So they dumped all this money into all our economies. It wasn't just the United States that did it. Every country did it. The United States did it worse than everyone else. They dumped it more because most Americans are crybabies. We're not the tough individuals that we used to be that made America great, you know, 50 to 100 or 200 years ago. We've become very spoiled and enjoying the luxuries that our, I guess you would say, our ancestors, our forefathers built for us. But we're not the Americans that we were, that made our country great decades and decades and centuries ago. So what do we have to do? Well, they had to give everybody a pacifier. Pacifier was a bunch of money. And when they dumped all this money into our economy, come on, these guys are brilliant. They're smart. They've been not just to universities, many of them have PhDs. They knew when you have too much money, volume, chasing too few commodities, that is the classic definition for inflation. So it was inevitable. The tsunami had been created based on the pandemic. The response to the pandemic was dumping too much money. They just didn't know when the tsunami was going to show up on the beach of our economies. And it started showing up last year, early signs if you knew what you were looking for, but really didn't show up until second quarter of this year. And all of a sudden now, this week, we've had the highest jump in mortgage rates, the highest increase in mortgage rates in the history of the United States, in the history of the United States. So I'm going to watch this little video with you so you can see what I'm talking about. And what can you do about it? Well, there's nothing you can do about it. It's here. If you haven't taken my advice and learned how to use a HELOC to get the equity, the idle equity out of your home's value that has skyrocketed over the last 18 months to 2 years, now we're going to see those values starting to plummet. And the money that I was trying to explain that you could get a hold of through a HELOC to pay off high interest debt so that you could survive this coming economic crisis, we're still able to do it, but not at the level that you could have done it 6 months ago. So if you're watching this going, okay, is it over? Is it too late? No. Can you get the deal that you could have gotten 6 months ago? No, and maybe never again. But I'll share this video, and then you'll have to make a decision on whether you're going to make a smart decision with the time that's left, with the equity that's still left in your home before it evaporates as the housing market resets by 20 or 30%, basically eroding or eliminating the equity that has been built up over the last 2 years. Let me let you share this with you, and then hope you have a great day.
Anxiety hitting the real estate market. According to a new survey from data platform Dynata, 81% of Americans say it's hard to find a home to buy or rent right now, mostly because of high prices. Mortgage rates are a big part of that. They're rising at the fastest pace in decades. Home sales are suddenly slowing, and data shows new home construction in May declined more than analysts expected. So is housing in for the same kind of crash we saw in the Great Recession? Here's CNBC's real estate correspondent, Diana Olek.
During the Great Recession, when home prices positively crashed, millions of homes went into foreclosure. That was because the mortgages holding up the housing market were a mess. Lenders were basically giving anyone a loan. Not so since then. For the 53.5 million first lien home mortgages in America today, the average borrower credit score is a record high 751. It was below 700 back in 2010. And thanks to the recent run-up in home prices, those borrowers have record tappable home equity. That's how much you can take out of your home and still leave 20% equity in it. $11 trillion in total, up 34% from a year ago. That's a significant cushion in case home prices soften or even fall.
If the economy were to slow significantly, then we could potentially see a home price dips. But that's not my base case. My expectation is that we'll see home price grow.
During the Great Recession, 1 in 4 homeowners was underwater on their mortgage, meaning they owed more than the home was worth.
So when it comes to the financial position of homeowners in the aggregate, housing is on really solid footing right now.
So what about the riskier loans? Well, there are just 2.5 million adjustable rate mortgages outstanding today. Compare that to 13 million in 2007, just before the housing crash. A little more than half of those today are about to reset to higher rates, so there is a risk. But back in 2007, about 10 million of those were resetting higher. Mortgage delinquencies are now at a record low, just 3% of loans, which is actually less than before the pandemic.
The real risk to housing right now is affordability and recession. Prices are still so high that some new buyers just can't get in, and sky-high rents make saving for a down payment very difficult. As for current homeowners, if a recession hits and people start to lose their jobs, then they may struggle to make their payments, especially if they stretch to buy that home in the first place.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.